Now on Daf Yutes Amud Beis, we're trying to figure out why is it important to stay with one Rebbe on the level of Girsa, that first level. And the Gemara answers the lo liflug lishnei, because when you're at the level of Girsa and you're learning the text, there are different texts, there are different Girsos, exactly what the text says. You start jumping around from one Rebbe to the other, you get very, very confused. Once you've mastered the text from one Rebbe, now you delve into the lumdus, the analysis, and the derech halimud, and then it's best to expose yourself to different drachim, to different rebbeim, and get a different new perspective from each one of them. Al palge mayim. Why does the pasuk in Tehillim speak about streams of water? What's the symbolism here of the stream of water? Omar Rabbi Tanchum bar Chaniloi, li olam yishalish adam shnosav shlish mikra, shlish mishnah, shlish talmud. Now, it seems that this idea of streams of water means that every stream has a different kind of power or a different kind of, velocity, whatever it might be. And every part, the Torah can be divided up into three disciplines, right? So you may remember, when you studied in high school or maybe in college, they told you to take this, take basic math and take history and take English. You know what I mean? So you could divide up the Torah into three fundamentally different segments, or shall we call them studies. Each one is a discipline unto itself. So one discipline is called Mikra, the other is called Mishnah, and the third discipline is called Talmud. And Rashi interprets it thusly. He says that when you talk about Mikra, you mean going through Tanakh. You talk about Mishnah, you're talking about analyzing the Tanakh on one level. Talmud is when you compare different parts of the Torah and you come up with what seem to be contradictions until you can finally master the Torah in the depth and reconcile all these contradictions. Now, what are we dividing up into 3/3? So here we have Machlokas Rashi on the one hand and Tosafos and the Rambam on the other hand. Rashi learns that you should divide up every week, leave out Shabbos, for example, but you've got 6 days, 2 days of the week, Sunday and Monday, let's say, you should study and dedicate yourself to Mikra, 2 days to Mishnah, and 2 days to Talmud. I don't know why Shabbos didn't fit into the picture. But Tosafos rejects this. Tosafos says that, the Gemara says, Miyada inish kamachaye. The Gemara initially in the Hamid thought it meant divide up the years of your life. Let's say you're going to live till the age of 60 is 246. So 20 years of Mikra, 20 years of Mishnah, 20 years of Talmud. So the Gemara immediately asks, did anybody whisper into his ear, when he's going to die? Is he going to live till 60? Maybe he'll live till 90? Maybe even 120? So kikamina biyomi. So the Gemara answers, no, we're talking about days. So again, Rashi holds 2 days, 2 days, and 2 days. That's how you divide up the week. And Tosafos says no. How do you know you'll live more than 2 days? If you'll die within the next 2 days, that's a pretty frightening thought. Then you won't even get to Mishnah. And if you'll dedicate another 2 days to Mishnah, maybe you won't live it to get to Talmud. Therefore, Tosafos says you divide up every single day. Yeah, I don't know exactly how that solves the problem, because even if you divide your day into 3 parts, how do you know you'll be alive in the afternoon or in the evening? I don't know. But the Rambam also says divide up your day. But the Rambam adds a very important point. He says, that only applies when he's a young student and he's new. Once he gets older, he doesn't have to dedicate a third of his day to Mikra, a third of his day to Mishnah. He can dedicate his entire day to Talmud. And from time to time, the Rambam recommends that he reviews his Mikra and his Mishnah. Because basically, Talmud is a much more advanced study than Mikra and Mishnah. And now we get to another pasuk. And again, back to Tehillim, it says, Asher pirio yiten be'ito. Right? It yields its fruit in its season. Omar Rav, in pirio yiten be'ito, I can understand the beginning of the pasuk. He yields the fruit in its appropriate time. But aleu lo yivo. the next part of the pasuk says that the leaf never withers. Well, what's the point here? And the answer apparently is, based on Rashi, that Pirio Yitain has to do with fulfilling the mitzvahs. And if you are dedicated to Pirio, that you fulfill the mitzvahs in their proper time, then Aleu Lo Yibol. Lo Yibol means literally, it'll never wither, which means you'll be successful. Be in love. But if he doesn't have fixed times in his schedule to Torah, to mitzvahs, he doesn't fulfill his Torah mitzvahs in a timely fashion, then kol halomed v'alamalamed aleim kosav omer, whether it's the student or the teacher, the pasuk says lo kain harashoim ki'im, etc., etc. Not so the wicked, rather they're like the chaff that the wind blows away. So you get these people who, you know what, I'll do the mitzvah when I get a chance, when I have time, maybe today, tomorrow, and a month from now, Torah study, yeah, once a month. That's not going to do it. Again, I find it a little bit shocking that the Gemara uses this pasuk in such a harsh way. Harashoyim. What does it mean? A pasuk in Mishlei Ma'itasiv Ki Rabim Chalolim Ipila. Many victims she has felled. Felled means to lahapil. And now we're going to get into two different problematic situations. Sometimes a person thinks he's a big shot, and already a young youth, he doesn't know beans about the halacha, and you ask him a question, he says, I'm going to paskin for you. By the way, I see this all the time. And then you have the other extreme. You have somebody who's nechbal kalim, he's like, low self-esteem, or at least he's hiding in the back of the basement. She really knows a great deal. And he doesn't want to get involved in answering questions. So both of these extremes are very negative. Ki rabim chalolim hipila, victims have fallen. Zeh talmud shelo yigilo ro mora. Yeah, he's a big shot. He's a youngster, and he says, I'm going to paskin for you all the shilas. V'atzumim kol harugeha, which, by the way, sounds like it's even worse. Right? Mighty are those that she has slain. Zeh talmud sheigilo ro v'yanamora. He has the wherewithal, he has the knowledge, and he refuses to get involved. Don't bother me. I'm in my own little world here. I'm not going to come and decide and rule on halachic issues. Fiat kama. Now, if you're telling me that there's something in the middle, a shvil hazahav, the perfect golden middle, right, where you have studied enough and you're ready to paskin shilas, adar boim shni. You have to sit at the feet of your Rebbe for 40 years. Frek Gemara, for Rava Ore, Rava died at the age of 40. So it's impossible to assume that Rava was paskening shilas, had dedicated himself to study at Rabbi's Rebbe's feet for 40 years. Hasan B'Shav. If in town there's no one else like you in the quality and the quantity of Torah that you know, maybe you're not 40 years at your Rebbe's feet, you can pass. So Rava lived in a generation where he was top banana, even though he did not fulfill the requirement of 40 years. By the way, some use this as a remez. Maybe I shouldn't tell Rabbi Rhodes this. As a remez, not to study Kabbalah, not to get too involved in Kabbalah. And some say that as far as learning Kabbalah is concerned, you have to wait till you're 40 years old. But Lamaisa today, it's unbelievable. The amount of Kabbalah that's being studied by young fellows, especially among Sfaradim, it's unreal. Now, what I find a little bit contradictory here in this Gemara, maybe you can help me with this, is if you have to be at your Rebbe for 40 years, before we learned the Gemara, Palgei Mayim, that you should be jumping around from one Rebbe to the other. Imagine if you start learning at your Rebbe's feet at the age of 18, for 40 years, you're already 58, and now you're going to start looking for another Rebbe. I don't know exactly how to reconcile that. But anyway, V'alo, another pasuk in Tehillim, actually the pasuk that we studied before, Va'alehu lo yibol, the leaf never withers. We had a whole drush about that. Afilu sichas chulin shel talmidei chacham tzricha talmud. It's unbelievable that scholars, when they speak sichas chulin, they're talking about matters of mundane matters of daily life, and they're very careful in the way they express themselves. Their tzuras hadibur is a reflection of the fact that they are chachamim. So be careful and try to learn even from the casual conversation of scholars. Shenemer v'aleu lo yibo v'chol asher yasi yatzliach. Amar Rabbi Shimon Levi, davar zeh kos v'tor shon v'levim kol v'mishulish b'ksuvim. This concept that through the study of Torah you will succeed, and maybe it doesn't mean success in the physical, financial world of this Gashmi's earth, but maybe it means you'll succeed in the world to come. This is repeated over and over again in the Torah, in the Nevi'im, and in the Ksuvim. Let's go one by one. Kosev Torah. Where do I find this written in the Torah? The Ksuvit says. And now, according to Pasuk at the end of the Torah, it says, "V'shmaitem es divrei habris hazos v'asisem osam l'man taskilu es kol asher tasun." Right? If you observe the words of the covenant, which means the words of the Torah, and you dedicate it to its mitzvos and to its study, you will succeed in all that you do. And again, that means that you'll have an free entry into Olam Haba. So in Nevi'im, what does it say? Nevi'im lo mo'im sefer. This is Yoshua says, "Lo yam sefer Torah sebi pichu v'gisu v'yom v'layla man tishmar lasos kechol hakosuv boki oz tatzliach es drochecha." In order that you guard to do according to all that's written here. In other words, you're lomed al manas lasos. You're not just learning as a theoretical body of knowledge. And then the pasuk promises you will make your way successful. And then it says, Taskil, you will prosper. Mishulish B'Ksuvim, the third time it says in Ksuvim. And this is going to be the pasuk in Tehillim that we spoke about before. Ki im b'toras Hashem chefta b'torasi yegiyom v'layla haya ke'eit shasal palgi mayim asher pirio yite be'ito v'aleu lo yibo. It yields its fruit in its season. Its leaf will never wither. V'chol asher yaseh yatzliach. Machris Rabbi Achseloi. Man boy chai. Imagine somebody has the potion for life. What was that guy's name? A Spaniard. What was his name?
Ponce de
Governor the
Leon.
Fountain of Life. What was his name?
Ponce de Leon.
Ponce de Leon, right. So imagine this is the Talmudic Ponce de Leon, and it's Rabbi Achseloi. He's a great Tana, and he's saying, "Come, I'll teach you the secret of life." Very famous, I got it. So Kuli Alma, right? Kanof Asu Kuliyam, everybody came. I hope they didn't trample each other. Amri Lei Havlan Chai, give us life. Reveal to us the secret of life. Amar Lahu, it's a pasuk in Tehillim. Mi Ha'isha Chavetz Chaim, Nitzol L'Shon Chamera, Sur Meirav Asei Tov, etc., etc. Basically, you have to avoid Lashon Hara. And of course, the Chavetz Chaim wrote a book called Chavetz Chaim based on this Gemara. And it's all about the laws of Lashon Hara. And Miya Isha Chavetz Chaim. And it seems like Lashon Hara is viewed as like a power that's antithetical to life. Like, for example, the Gemara says in Erechah that the punishment for Lashon Hara is tzaras. And tzaras, the Gemara always equates with a mess. So avoiding Lashon Hara is a secret potion to life, to avoid death. Lashon Hara is death. Chazal say, according to one opinion, that the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed because of Lashon Hara. In the Gemara Gittin, it's called Sinas Chinam, but the Chavetz Chaim identifies Sinas Chinam as Lashon Hara. We spoke at great length yesterday about Leitzonis. Leitzonis is another form of Lashon Hara. And the root of Lashon Hara is that you think you're better than the next one. Right? I can say condescending words about the next one because look at me, I'm great. So it's a function of conceit, of selfishness, self-centered. Shema Tomar Adam Natsarti Lashon Hara Svasai B'Dav Mirva V'Elech V'Esgora B'Sheina. If I can't talk Lashon Hara, I might as well sleep late in the morning. People wake up in the morning, they can't wait to speak Lashon Hara. Gossip, rechius. What's the latest? Talmud Loma, you think that just because you avoided Lashon Hara, that's Sur Meirah, therefore you don't have to get involved in Asay Tov, you could sleep away? Sur Meirah Asay Tov. What's Tov? Ein Tov el Torah, shenemar ki lekach Tov nosati lechem, Torasi al tazovu. Okay, Rabbi, say that ends the Agadita. Now we go back to the Mishnah and to Masechet Avoda Zara, which says that Higil keep a Avodas Kol Chavim, that if you want to participate in the construction of a bathhouse, then a Jew is allowed to do so until they reach the point in which they're putting up the dome, because the dome is where they're going to place their idol. And that you're not allowed to be part of the construction of the dome, because then you're part of creating a temple for Avodah Zarah. Let's say he went ahead and he violated this Isur. He built the dome and he got paid for his work. Says Rabbi Eliezer, in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, he's allowed to benefit from the money. He doesn't have to throw it into the Yam HaMelech. Pshita, the Gemara says, Misham she'avodas kol chavim hein. Misham she'avodas kol bein l'Rabbi Yishmael, bein l'Rabbi Akiva, einan asurin, ad sheyavdu. What does this mean? We have something called Mishamshe Avodas Kol Chavim. I think we mentioned it in the past. This is not what we call Avodah Zara Atzma. You know, we're not talking about worshiping the idol. We're talking about accessories. We're talking about, building a dome. So Mishamshe Avodas Kol Chavim, apparently universally accepted ruling is that you're allowed to benefit from it, unless the idol worshippers took that accessory and they actually worshipped it. Up until that point, it's only an accessory. It's Tashmishe Ovdei Kol Chavim. And Tashmishe Ovdei Kol Chavim, otherwise known as Mishamshe Ovdei Kol Chavim, Eina Masur. What is Rabbi Eliezer here? Rabbi Eliezer, excuse me. What was he coming to be mechadish? He's talking about constructing a dome. Why don't you talk about constructing an idol? Let's say you're a great sculptor, and they hire you to sculpt an idol, and they pay you for that. The money is mutter. So that would be an even greater chiddush. So that Rabbi Yirmiyah says that Rabbi Elazar was not focused on the case of Mishamshe Avodas Kol Chavim, in the case of building and constructing a dome, which will eventually, house the idol. No. He went even further than that. The chiddush of Rabbi Elazar was that you're allowed to get paid for constructing an idol. Now, the obvious question is, what about lifnei velo sitei michshel? I mean, you're putting a stumbling block in front of the. So I would say offhand that maybe we're talking about trei ivri denare or chad ivri denare, I should say. If the Jew doesn't do this work, they'll find somebody else. So once again, I think we have to emphasize one point, and it's very easy to miss this point. We're not talking about a tzaddik who observed the law. We're talking about somebody who transgressed the law. You're not allowed to participate and be paid for constructing an idol. That for sure is awesome. That's lifnei iver. But if you went ahead and did it post facto b'di'evid, are you allowed to take the money that you were paid and use it? Comes along Rav Yirmiyah and he says that's what Rav Elazar had in mind. That even if you were actually constructing an idol and getting paid for that sculptor work, you don't have to throw the money that you got paid his wages into the Amel. The Gemara is not happy about this. Avodas kolchom shel Yisrael asur miyad. Mishal avodei kolchovim ad shetavod. We have a Mandiyomar, this is Rabbi Shmuel that we alluded to before. And Rabbi Shmuel makes a fundamental distinction between the idol of a Jew and the idol of a Goy. In the case of the idol of a Goy, Rabbi Shmuel says that there's no Iser that's Chal until the Goy actually worships that idol. The fact that he constructed that idol for the purpose of worship, that doesn't make it us. But if a Jew, chas v'shalom, would go ahead and construct an idol, then Rabbi Shmuel is of the opinion it's prohibited even before the Jew actually worshipped. Which means hazmana milsa, meaning that if something was designated for that purpose, then it already has that status. Shapir. This works out very well because you were commissioned by idolaters to create a statue, to create an idol. And until the guy, because he's the one who owns this idol, worships it, then it's mutter. That's Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Kiva rejects Rabbi Shmuel, the Amar Shel Ovdei Kochavim, Asur Miyad, even when a guy creates an idol and he hasn't yet worshipped the idol. Nevertheless, it's already Asur B'Toras what? B'Toras Avoda Zara is Michael and Meimar. The statue is prohibited immediately on its construction, on its completion. And therefore, the money that the Jew received for sculpting it, should be treated as money that's derived from an idol that's awesome. He got money for an idol. The idol already is awesome, even though the guy hasn't worshipped it. That's Rabbi Kiva's Shita. Eloma Rabbi Baravuna. Let's go back to the drawing board. Do you want to know what the Chiddush of Rabbi Lazar is? In the case where you built and constructed a bathhouse and you got to the dome, Lo nitzra el b'makush acharon. Well, this is counterintuitive, but let's try. For sure, once the statue is created, any monies that are paid to the Jew who created and sculpted that statue are also, that's for sure. But there's something called a makush achron. Makush achron, which we call makav patish, means the last hammer blow. So the statue is basically completed. But the Jew is now going to bang it one more time. That's the final blow. And that's when Rabbi Eliezer wants to mechadish that the Jew can enjoy the money that he's being paid At what point does the status of this idol have the status of Avodah Zara? Kamar Malach. No, it's as long as he's still working and you haven't finished it, and it hasn't been completed, then even if I hold Rabbi Akiva that there's an Isur Miyad, that's only after it's completed. But if it hasn't been completed, and there's no Gemar Malacha, then it's not considered Avodah Zara until the Akum actually worships it. V'yemas havi Gemar Malacha b'makus achron. And makus achron lesle pruta, shova pruta. Alma kasav yesh no schirus mitchila v'atzam. Okay, now this Ein l'schiyus mitchila v'sof is a very profound and complicated sugya. But the basic, let's say, superficial knowledge that we need to know to get by this sugya is that until the idol is complete, it's not us. Even according to Rabbi Akiva, who says miyad, prior to the actual avoda on the part of the guy, it already has a status of avoda. So that's only if it's complete. Now the payment to this worker, the wage, is for completing the entire thing, for completing the last hammer blow. Because as we said, it's not considered an idol until the last hammer blow. So kasava yeshno l'skirus mitchila v'ad sof. He says the following. When a craftsman contracts to perform a specific service at a wage, he does not earn his fee all at once upon the conclusion of his service, but rather for every single portion of the work he carries out, he earns a fee immediately. As long as the workman is still engaged in his labor, the idolater is not yet ready to accept, I guess, delivery of the statue. And the statue is not yet ready to be worshipped. So until that final hammer blow, it's not ready to be worshipped. So the money that's being paid to the workman, that obligation to pay his wages is only generated when he completes the idol. Because once again, the guy who commissioned him to build the idol is not interested in this idol until it is absolutely complete. So that all the monies that are being paid as wages, because we're holding now Yeshna l'schiyus mitchil vad sof, and basically every single time he bangs, with a hammer, he generates a wage that he should be paid. those wages are not being paid to him for an idol because the idol hasn't been created yet. If, on the other hand, you would hold ein l'schiyus ela b'sof, which means that you pay the wage for that final hammer blow when he completes the idol, then it would be awesome. So the chish Rabbi Lazar is that yesh l'schiyus mitchila v'ad sof. Okay, we have 2 more minutes just to try to make at least a beginning on this Mishnah on the bottom of Yutes Amid Beis. Einosin tachshitim lavodos kochavim. We're not allowed to make tachshitim for idols. Kalatos uzmamim, katlos uzmanim v'tavos. Okay, so katlos are things that go around the neck. And nizamim are nose rings or earrings. And tabos are rings for the finger. These are different ornaments that are made for idols. And Rabbi Eliezer Omer, bischar mutter. It is unimaginable that any Tana would permit the creation of ornaments for idols. But if we amend Rabbi Eliezer's ruling, this is not Rabbi Elazar that we learned before, it should read schara mutter. Its pay is permissible. So he's not allowing creating ornaments for idols. He simply states that if one violated the law and created such ornaments, he is permitted to benefit from the payment he received for his work. And once again, that would depend upon the sugya of yeshno schiyus mitchila sof or not. Again, to finish up here, ein mochrim lehem b'mechuber lekarka. We don't sell plants that are attached to the ground for the purpose of idol worshippers. Because that's considered selling land. Once they get a foothold in Eretz Yisrael, we violate the Isur lo tichanem. But once he cuts off the plants and harvests them, then he's allowed to sell them to a guy because it's no longer giving a guy achiza b'karka of Eretz Yisrael. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, however, mocher hu al manas lokutz. Even if it's still attached to the ground, he's allowed to sell it on condition that they'll be cut down. So it's almost as if it's built into the transaction that they're selling it after it's tolush. It's no longer part of the karka. It's the guy can't own the karka or these plants as long as they are attached to the karka. How do we know that you're not allowed to sell karka to a guy if it's in Eretz Yisrael? Rabbi Yossi Rav Chanina, Tiyama Kra lo sichanim. This is a violation of lo sichanim lo titen lehem chanoya bekarka. To not give them a holding in the ground. So we're not allowed to transfer land in Israel over to an idolater. And since these plants are mechuber lekarka, they have a din of karka, therefore you cannot sell them. And if you do, you violate the isur of lo sichanim.